What we've done so far is installed wood blocking to match the height of the existing insulation. You always want to have wood blocking with a roof hatch. Then we laid the membrane over the wood blocking, and we actually set the curb on top of the membrane. So the curb itself is going to be our termination. The reason for that is you don't want to add any termination that's going to put any screws through the side of the roof hatch, because people are going to be coming up through this roof hatch, and you don't want anyone getting hurt on anything that we did. So this is a way to avoid having any fasteners going through the side of the roof hatch. And once we get the roof hatch in place, now, since we're using the hatch itself as the termination, I actually go pretty heavy on the screws. You can see I usually try to run about 1 every 8 inches whenever I'm screwing down a roof hatch. That way you know you have good termination for the roof membrane, and the hatch is going to be down nice and solid also. All right, now we got the curb, the hatch completely screwed down the whole way around about every 8 inches. And a couple guys have actually asked me what purpose the Elevate AP Sealant serves. And I'll say this right here is the only purpose I've ever found for it where it actually is useful. And that is because our flange is exposed, we're only going to have our flashing cover it. So the edge and these screw heads can get wore through the membrane fairly quickly. AP sealant on all the screw heads and around the edge kind of blunts that and makes for a better, longer lasting flashing. Okay, so now we've cleaned the whole way around, including bigger areas on the corners with weather membrane cleaner. Where we X'd our membrane out and the cut's still exposed here, that has to be covered, and it has to be covered with something cured. Whenever you wrap the curb, that spot actually won't get covered. So before we wrap the curb, what I'm doing now is taking pieces of cured cover strip big enough to make sure that we have our 3 inches of coverage everywhere on here. But then also I notched it out so that these pieces will come back off the corner. Then our curb flashing will come to the corner and close that off and give that coverage right there. Okay, so now we've got our piece cut, everything primed, everything glued, ready to go. Of course, to get the length on our piece, we measured around the curb, added for our seam. Then, like I said, primered down on the deck, glued up the side of the curb as high as we could, glued the piece of curb flashing, and now we're just waiting for it to dry so we can get her stuck. If you notice, we actually left quite a bit turned down up here at the top. On a roof curb or a roof hatch, next thing you do is you go around and you want to kind of roll that up underneath this lip. And you can also see down on the deck, we have our seam completely outside of where the edge of the flange for the roof hatch is. Now we've got curb wrapped. That piece that we had doubled down, we actually tucked up underneath so that it rolls back around and kind of, there's a gap in between the two pieces here. What you do is take backer rod, tuck it up between the two layers of rubber. This curb's actually the best kind that you can deal with because it has these little tabs. So as long as there's backer rod in there, it's going to be okay. If you're dealing with a curb that does, or a hatch that doesn't have those tabs, like an older hatch or just a brand that doesn't have the tabs, you want to make sure that your backer rod, you actually kind of have to stuff it up in there, because that is what is basically, that ends up being your termination, because you never ever run T-bar on a roof hatch. Number one reason is because you're going into directly into the fiberboard. Termination bar does not seal to fiberboard. Like, the fiberboard will just compress and then your termination's no good. And to run screws in for the T-bar, you're running screws through the inside of the hatch, which is the other big no-no. On this type of hatch, once you stuff your backer rod up in between the two layers of rubber, just take a screwdriver or whatever, push these prongs in, and that there, right there, your roof hatch is terminated properly. Okay, so now we've applied our flashing corners. There ended up being T-joint, then a spot where, because we brought our curb flashing out onto the roof far enough to cover the flange, there was a little gap here. So there was another point that we needed extra protection on there and here, and then another T-joint. So we just cut 20-inch pieces of flashing and covered all four of them in one shot. And now you have a completed curb, or completed roof hatch. So until they get their ladder in here, anyone's welcome to fall down the hole they want. And remember, never, ever, 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 ever put termination bar on a roof hatch.